Welcome. To the 5 steps to empowered eating. I'm Laurie Shopland, and I'm going to walk you through. It's probably about a 35-minute presentation. And at the end, I will answer any and all of your questions that you have for me. So please go ahead, as I made mention of writing them down or taking notes of them, but I will absolutely answer any of your questions at the end for you. And as I mentioned, I want to make this interactive. So actually, I'm going to pull up my notes, um, my toolbox here so I can see your notes. Chat box, here we go. Because I'm going to ask you some questions along the way because I really do want to engage with you so that this information is really applicable to what it is that you're struggling with right now. So we're going to get started. I'm going to do that. Turn this on here. Here we go. All right. So my guess is if you are here and you're interested in the topic of the 5 steps to empowered eating, it tells me that you are wanting to have a healthier lifestyle. You're perhaps wanting to maybe lose some weight. You're wanting to have this nutritional lens to it. And yet we're struggling, right? Because you were looking for answers. If that sounds like you, I totally get it, right? Because we tend to think that, well, we should just know what to eat and then everything will fall into place, right? And yet where the struggle and the disconnect is that there are millions of links out there on the internet available to us of what we should be eating and what we shouldn't be eating. I mean, all of us pretty much know that French fries and donuts aren't going to give us that sustainable lifestyle and health that we're all so eager for. And yet, we know that more vegetables and more protein probably would, but the real reason is why aren't we doing that? And why is it that we know 3 meals a day, healthy rounded meals is what everybody says to do, and yet we're stuck snacking, or even maybe some of the snacks turned into overeating. And it's like, oh, why are we doing this? And that's what I'm going to broach on today. And I'm going to give you the 5 steps to help you remove going from that type of eating to an empowered type of eating. So today we're going to talk about the real reason we struggle with eating, not eating, but with snacking. 2 concepts that I found so powerful as I was going through my own journey of this, of over hunger and over desire. Then we're going to talk about the number 1 coaching tool that I use with my clients and to take and help them give and take back control of their urges for snacking. And that is the number 1 tool. But then I'm going to tell you the 4 rest of the steps in my empowered eating program. And then I'm going to offer you and tell you how I can help you further if you're interested. And if you're not, totally fine. You're going to get your total, I was going to say money's worth. This is a free program, so that doesn't quite work. But you know what I mean? You're absolutely going to get value for the information you're going to hear today. But if you want more help, I'm going to offer that and tell you how I can help that further. And then I'm going to answer any and all of your questions. So can't wait to hear what you have. All right. So a little bit about me is this was my struggle. I was not always a certified life and weight coach. Before that, I was actually a professional fundraiser. And here in British Columbia, Canada, I worked for some very notable organizations, Canadian Cancer Society, Canuck Place Children's Hospice, and actually for the former Premier, Christy Clark, raising over $40 million in my career. So I'm a smart woman. I know that. And yet I struggled with my weight. I yo-yoed for years. I had a real love-hate relationship with Timbit donuts and with cereal. And it was like, like just the overwhelm and the stress would set in, and I just didn't know how else to cope with it. And it was interesting, and being totally real and raw with you, it wasn't actually my desire to lose weight so much as it was my desire that I wanted to navigate out of fundraising, and I knew I wanted to coach. And so I hired a life coach to help me in my professional career. And that coach shared with me some tools to say, you could use these tools the same and apply them to your weight loss journey. And guess what? I did. That was about coming up almost 3.5 years ago that I implemented the changes in my career, and I started to implement the same tools that she taught me, and I applied them to my weight loss. And I lost over 47 pounds. And I was good at losing weight over my years. I'm going to give you that because I would go up and down, but I was always good at putting it back on. And here I offer you, I've kept it off for over 3.5 years, and I know with confidence it is never coming back. And guess what? I don't eat sawdust. I actually have cereal. I have Timbits. I have wine. It's part of my program. I eat so I can live and enjoy my living and joyfully. But I've also learned how I can lose weight for good. So all of that to say, that's a little bit about me. So now I'm a life coach, and that's what I do is I help women and I teach them an empowered approach to life and to weight loss. And so now knowing me, I'd love to know a little bit about you. Would you consider yourself someone who snacks? Do you struggle with that? And I would love in the notes there, just give me a or a Y or an N for a yes or a no. Would you consider yourself to struggle with snacking? And if it's snacking, is that the snacking perfect? Oh, Sylvia, not at all. Okay, perfect. Well, that's good too. Jen, yeah, you do. This is great. So just knowing in there. So Sylvia, we're going to talk about snacking. We're going to talk about our desire to eat more food. So just letting you know that an empowered approach is that we have the confidence to know the food that we're going to be eating. So if you identify like that, simply without even labels, it's just clearly understanding that if we're snacking, it simply means that we're just eating more food than our body needs for fuel. And I liken it to, think of yourself as going to Chevron gas station and filling up your car. You put the nozzle into the car and you fill it. And the car actually will not take anything more than it needs. And then it kind of regurgitates and flows out, and it's very dangerous. For us as humans, we don't necessarily have that issue. We will take more food in, and it has to be quite extreme for us to actually regurgitate it out. We actually just continue to consume it, and we get really uncomfortable, but sometimes we keep eating through that. And all that does is it stores all of that extra fuel, if you will, on our bodies. And that fuel sits as fat stores. And that, in essence, is what we have been conditioning ourselves to do over the years. So this is the number one reason of why we gain weight. And it's, for me, it seems so simple, and yet it was mind-blowing when I went through this of just understanding the whole concept of why I struggled with choosing more food. And we're going to talk about that, because I always thought that it was just me, that I just didn't have the willpower, that I just couldn't get things right. And so if that at all sounds like you, I want to let you know that we're going to ask the question why we're choosing to turn to food. And once we start to understand that, then we're going to know what we need to stop necessarily going to the Timbits and the cereal, and recognize that we can fuel our body with nutritious food and sometimes some joyful food too, and still go on to lose weight and have this empowered approach with life and with weight. So the question to ask is why? Why are we turning to the food when our body's not asking for it? So a lot of my clients will get stuck in this confusion cycle of saying, well, I just don't know. I don't know why I decide at 7 o'clock at night that I'm just going to sit down and have some chips, and some chips turns into the bag of chips, or I'm going to have a little bit of ice cream and it turns into the carton. I don't know why that is. And so they often will say, well, it's my hormones, or I'm just too busy to actually concentrate, and I'm picking up food along the way. And our brain just wants to spin in this confusion all of the time. If that's what you struggle with, I want to offer, it's actually an okay thing, because it means that your brain is working perfectly. And the more we understand why our brain does this for us, the better we can understand it and conquer it on the other end. So today I'm going to talk about the 3 main things that our brain does to gear us towards this snacking and overeating that we tend to do. And the more we can understand that, then the more we can actually get on the other end to go, oh, it makes sense why my brain tells me that Timbits would be the best option. So the part of the brain that I'm talking about, and I'm not scientific or medical by any stretch, but the studying I've done and my understanding is that the primitive brain, our lower brain, and I often call it the toddler brain, has 3 jobs to do. And it's called the motivational triad. And it has 3 jobs in which it basically functions in every decision that it makes. It has to meet at least one of these criteria. So the first and foremost part of our primitive brain is to seek pleasure. Like this young woman is looking out of the beautiful chocolates, right? Pleasurable food triggers the brain as if like this is a reward, this is great. So To better understand this, think back to our ancestors in the savannah, and they were, hunting and gathering and making sure that they could survive for the next day. They were searching out things that gave them pleasure so that they could ensure that they had survival. So that was fires and campfires to be able to have heat. That would be shelters to keep them dry and safe. That was food that they would get so that they would have the energy to have the sustainability for the next day. Our brain has been programmed to search out things that give us pleasure. But in the year 2020, we have so many things available to us that are pleasurable that our bodies just and our brain is just like on overload. Just think of how many things give us instant pleasure instantly. We don't have to work hard to even have air conditioning, right? Like we have pleasurable, and back in the day, you'd actually have to roll down the windows for it. We don't even have to do that. So even just to start to understand that, oh, my brain is just simply looking for pleasure and it's around me so easily. The second goal that our brain wants to work towards is to avoid pain. And the treadmill may not necessarily be painful, but our brain doesn't actually equate it like that. Think back again to our ancestors, and if they know that anything painful means death, right? So a tiger attacking them, they know instantly they've got their friends that got caught by the tiger that perished. So the brain instantly programs that to say anything that gives that fear sense inside of us and danger is bad. So we're going to avoid that altogether. So if you're like me and goodwill intentions, put your runners by your bed at night to say, okay, I'm going to get up in the morning and go to the gym. And then when you get up in the morning, your first thought is like, yeah, I think I'm just going to hit snooze and roll over. How many of us do that and then think that it's just us, that I don't have the willpower, that I'm not committed enough, I don't have any motivation? What if I told you none of that was true? Our brain is programmed to see the runners and to know, thinking, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to get out of my warm, safe bed. I'm going to get up and have to get cold and be uncomfortable and then go to the gym where it's going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to have thoughts about people watching me on the treadmill. No, our brain's thinking that's a really bad idea. Get back into bed and just turn over and we'll try another day. And as soon as I started to understand that my brain's not working against me, it's simply just working and doing its job, it made it so much more helpful and powerful to be able to know, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to have a talk with my brain. So the third element of our primitive brain is to repeat behaviors. It wants to remember, it wants to keep us safe. So it wants to always have energy available to run in case the tiger comes and chases us. So by storing our energy, it actually ensures that we're going to have that ability to protect ourselves. So repeating behaviors, our brain loves doing that. So think about it. We all brushed our teeth this morning, and how many of us actually even gave it a second thought? We never think about all of it. I don't even know how many teeth we have. I don't know, 32 or something like that, right? We don't say brushing number 1, brushing number 2. It's a habit that our brain does because we know that it is a part of our survival, if you will. How many other things do we just rinse and repeat because our body and our brain are just coordinated to it makes it easy for us and it conserves energy? Well, that's part of the job of the primitive brain to do. So if you're like me and I would go to Starbucks when I worked in corporate Vancouver, I would stop at Starbucks for my hour-and-a-half drive, and I would get myself my grande London fog and a piece of banana bread, right? Condensing my own breakfast on the go. So the one time that I would pull up to go, I'm probably going to maybe nip this and I'm just going to get a tea and I'm not going to do any muffin today or the bread, right? I'm going to get healthy. Guess what? My brain sees a change in behavior and it wants to revolt. Remember, I call it a toddler. It literally would throw a fit saying, okay, wait a minute, changing patterns is dangerous. We don't want to do that. And so I would instantly, as I'm in the drive-through, have these battling thoughts in my brain saying, oh, we don't want to do that, right? And then I would think it's just me, right? That I'm the only one on this planet that just can't simply go and have a peppermint tea instead of having all of this extra. And then I would always just then do that beating myself up and thinking, oh, I'm just not meant to lose weight. I'm not meant to be in control of my food. And I would get up to the window and I'd order my food and I'd probably get a little something extra, right? Because of course my brain's looking for pleasure. So I'd probably throw in maybe one of those egg muffins too, just because. All right. So if we now understand why our brain is programmed to actually continue to search out the types of extra eating that we're doing and why we're not sticking to the plans that we're doing, then how do we solve for it? And I want to offer the two main things that we need to address that causes us to look for more food would be two areas. And the first one is overhunger. I picked this picture. I tried to actually find one that represented what Laurie looks like when she's hangry. And I look nothing like this. My husband could attest to it. I get really cranky. I get really snarly. And I pretty much want to eat off anybody's head, right? Because you just push the limits. But that, when we get to overhunger, we actually, as in my terminology, we're not setting ourselves up for success. But let's talk a little bit before we go to overhunger and understand what actual hunger is. Because our bodies have been equipped with a beautiful tool called hunger. And it is a signal that actually we can use daily to keep us on track. But what's happened is we have literally miscalibrated it. We don't listen to it anymore. How many of us actually, don't listen to our natural hunger? We would eat by the clock. And I, would eat lunch at noon because that's when I was told I was going to have lunch. And then I go to a cocktail party. Well, there's cocktails and little mini wiener things. I'm going to eat them, right? Because the food's in front of me, even though I had just had dinner. I'm not listening to my body at all. I'm just simply eating because the food's in front of me. I'm not at all honoring the natural hunger scale in which my body has. If and when we actually get to calibrating that and getting into that system, we then get something called fat adapted. And our body will actually have this whisper of hunger, and it trusts us to say, well, she's going to actually fuel me. She's going to eat when I'm hungry. So right now for fuel, I'm going to go and eat some fat stores for energy. I liken it, and I tell my clients, it's kind of like Pac-Man. And we turn Pac-Man on when we start to engage our natural hunger. But when we miscalibrate it and we're not listening to our natural cues, then of course it makes sense that we're all over the map. And of course we're not ever knowing if we're full or if we're hungry. We actually have hunger hormones called leptin and ghrelin. But when we throw it all off, everything goes out the window and we get into this overhunger state. So a miscalibrated hunger scale can absolutely be fixed. And it's what I do with my clients, absolutely, to get them to this place so that they can get into fat adaptation, and then they can start burning off their own fat stores. But my friends, it's not a quick fix. So I often will have clients come and say, well, can you just give me a meal plan? Can you just give me, they want a magic pill, or how long is this going to take? Anytime that we have this sense of urgency that it has to happen fast, you're looking for a diet. And that's not what we offer at all. And I would just offer, just look back to memory. Anytime you've done a diet, ask yourself, how long did it last? We need to figure out what it is that our body needs so that you can start to fulfill that until, I always tell my clients, until we naturally decombust at 93 years of age, right? A diet's going to be short term. You got to figure out what our body needs and how to listen to it and honor it from now forward. And once you start to do that, you'll lose the weight and you'll be able to keep it off. I liken it to, and purposely picked this photo of this little child. So any of you that are moms that can remember the day of feeding our kids the first time of solids, or maybe an auntie being able to do it with a niece or nephew. Our kids before, as the brain developed, there is a window where our kids' development of their brain is triggered just to their natural hunger state. They cry when they're hungry, and they turn their heads when they're full. And then as their brain starts to develop, they start to increase more of other parts of their brain that starts to get the emotional cues in there that they'll actually eat when they're not maybe hungry, they just want it, and they're hungry and they're tired and they're cranky and they just pull for food. Sound familiar? But there is an ability to get to a natural state. And if all of us were at this natural state, we would all be at our natural weight without even thinking about food, because you know you're going to eat when you're hungry and you're going to stop when you're full. So a tool that I use with my clients is called the hunger scale. And it takes some time to familiarize ourselves with it. But once we get on there, you're able to then recognize going, oh, wait a minute, I have a habit of eating until I, completely off the cue of being stuffed and I eat everything on my plate because I have to. Or I go on the opposite and I actually don't get into the kitchen until I'm ravenous and over hungry, and then I make really bad, poor choices. So for me, that was more my case. I wouldn't listen to my body enough, so I would get into the kitchen probably around a -8. And as I'm making dinner, I'm pouring a glass of wine and I'm eating choco chips as well, because I can't wait until dinner is served. I would love to know from you, where would you say? Would you be on the positive side that you just continue to eat and we just overeating and snacking that way? Or are you somebody on the other side that is that minus part of not necessarily listening to ourselves and getting into that kitchen fast enough and soon enough? I'd love for you to put a P or a like a positive or a negative. Just write that if you want into there. That would be great. So as you do that, I'm going to tell you about one of my clients' experiences with the natural hunger scale. I've got a lot of different positives, negatives. Love it. And just even that, my friends, you just recognizing that. Nothing else you get from this webinar today. Just recognizing, isn't that interesting? How are either of those setting you up for success? So for those that are saying that we continue to eat, even though you're past what you've actually been satiated at, just starting to be conscious of that. And on the other side, if we're in the negative of, okay, what could I do to get into the kitchen sooner? What would that look like? And what would I have to do? Miranda, when she reached out for me for one-on-one coaching, for weight coaching, she'd come to me and she was absolutely perplexed. And she said, Laurie, I just don't even know why I've gained weight. I rarely eat. And as soon as she told me that, I knew she had just completely disregarded her natural hunger cues. And she was eating and doing a lot of thinking eating, as I call it, rather than actually feeding her natural hunger. Her body was so confused and not knowing if and when she was ever going to get food. Anytime she got food given to her and she was allowing it into her body, it would store it as fat stores. It wasn't certain ever when it was ever going to get it. So we spent a number of weeks working on that natural hunger scale. And from there, she went on to lose over 47 pounds herself. I think actually she's gone on to lose her 50 that she wanted to. Just that, from that one simple tool. It wasn't a diet of the food that she focused on. It was the diet, the mentality of, when am I hungry and when am I full? The second problem we can solve for that leads to, or is part of the overeating and the over-snacking part, is over-desire. And I want to hang out here for a minute of the over-desire word, breaking it in half. Desire, remember, is part of what our brain is searching for. So is it any, surprise at all that our brain loves to think and find things that give us pleasure, that we desire, right? If we know that that's kind of like on the radar of our primitive brain. So as soon as I even started to understand that, I went, oh, this is making so much more sense. It's not just me, right? It's the way my brain has been programmed and designed. So this just kind of blew me away as I started to learn and understand this. But we live in a society where food is used to compensate for negative emotions, and we also accommodate it with positive ones. So think back to one of the earliest memories you have of where you've maybe had a bad day, sad day at school, and you trudge home, and whoever greeted you, a babysitter or mom or dad, and they hear about your sad day, how likely was it that they offered you food to console you, right? It might have been some hot chocolate. It might have been a cookie, right? Like, we associated food to help us feel better. And then fast forward to a celebration, right? I remember in high school winning the basketball championships from our school. And all of us and the parents were celebrating. And I remember everybody's like, okay, let's go and meet at Dairy Queen, because we wanted to associate, or we wanted to celebrate with food. And so now There's nothing wrong with that at all. And there's nothing wrong with the chocolate milk or the hot chocolate to comfort us. But just understanding that it's no surprise that our brain associates emotions with food. So then, as adults now, when we're hungry, or pardon me, when we're sad, we look and think we need food to solve for it. When I'm happy, my brain's telling me, oh, I need food to solve for it, or to answer it, or to be part of it. And when we start to understand that that's how our brain's been programmed and wired, it's no surprise then that we then go and eat food again that's not necessarily regulated with our natural hunger. So our brain has a beautiful function. I mean, our whole body and the way that it works is just so magnificent. And the way that it works is anytime we put food into our system and it gets digested, our brain releases a mist of dopamine, which is a natural hormone of pleasure. So our brain loves it. And it reminds us saying, no, this is good. This is going to keep us living every day if we need to keep eating. And then there's other things that we have dopamine miss. Anytime we have sex, we have dopamine miss permeate through. Anytime we shop, sometimes we'll have that permeation through, right? Like it's just this way that our body and our brain is programmed to work. But there are certain things in our society that cause us not to have a mist, which is natural, but to actually have a shower of dopamine, which is just even more. And then guess what? There's even things that will cause waterfalls. Think of heroin. That would be a waterfall of dopamine to our brain. So is it any wonder that addicts actually think, oh, I just can't control this? And then truthfully, they can't. Their body is so programmed by saying, hey, we want more of that. So for me, and I shared with you my Timbits, I never understood on the soccer sidelines, right? All of the team would always pass around the Timbits, and Laurie would take one, and I couldn't just stop there. And I was like, hey, why? I don't understand this. And I would berate myself, and all of that negative self-talk would come in, and it was just me because my husband didn't have a problem with it. But it was the mist and the release of dopamines Laurie's brain was giving her was telling her, you want more of that. And you won't be satisfied until you get more of that. As soon as I started to understand that, it helped me then catch those thoughts and question them and start to feel more empowered and in control. So we often think that saying no to the extra food is the hard part. And I want to offer you that that's not the case. In order for Laurie to eat more Timbits would have actually required Laurie to exert more energy. I would have had to have found them on the sidelines. I would have had to have eaten it. I would have had to digest it, right? Like my body would have been required to do more work. But my brain is telling me I'd much rather do that work than actually sit and feel the emotion of disappointment, of an urge, of maybe some sadness. Whatever it is that was triggering me to go to the food in the first place, my body's saying, we would rather eat than actually feel that feeling. And this is where I just get so passionate about it. I'm hoping as we move forward that we will see a course for our younger kids into schools of how to feel our feelings. Because right now, the amount of women and men that I am seeing and that are coming to me, we have never been taught. And we are eating our emotions rather than learning how to feel them. So if that sounds like you, then you're not alone by any stretch. So how many of us think, well, no, I have this urge, I have this over desire for a certain food. And for me, it was cereal. That was completely my comfort food, and Timbits and wine, truthfully. So when I started doing this work, I was thinking, there's no way, like I'm always going to have this desire for this type of food. But I want you to think back. And I intentionally picked this silly little photo of a girl reminding herself of the old boyfriend, right? Like, oh no, I can't live without you, right? But then, right? So think back to high school and that boyfriend that we had way back in the day. And then all of a sudden, it's like, what was his name again? We actually do move on, and we can. And I just offer this as even just a new thought for you. I work with a number of women that used to be smokers. And so we'll use that as evidence to say, well, there you've actually used to have a desire for something, and then you were able to create a non-desire, or you were able to release the over-desire for it. We can do that with food. and it is what I do with my clients. This is a great client story, and Whitney, and you actually may recognize her. She was just awarded in December for Canada's Top Baker. And when she came to me, this was one image that she posted, I think it was, anyhow, earlier in her journey with me of losing 20 pounds. So as a professional baker, she had access to 20 pounds of butter. So what a great image. But this wasn't another 20. Her post that she had posted was during COVID. And I love it because she said, and she recognized after eating some emotions at the beginning of COVID, she then recognized it and was able to take back control, right? Whereas how many of us during COVID unconsciously, because of the stress and the overwhelm and the unknown, actually put on, I mean, that was the joke around Facebook, was COVID-19 pounds, right? But here's a client that knew and did the work to discover how she could actually, what emotions were driving her to eat, and she was able to do the work to not eat them, but to feel them. So the number one step to empowered eating that I teach and that I coach from is something I called eating from the prefrontal brain. So on this slide, you'll see 3 very interesting little diagrams. And in the middle is the picture of our brain. And it's unique and it's fascinating. And I really just speak to 2 different parts of it. One on the left is, as I've mentioned before, the primitive brain, the toddler brain, the lower brain. It is where most of our thoughts are created from. It is on that rinse and repeat. And remember, that part of the brain is just wanting to seek pleasure, to avoid pain, and to be efficient. So that is all of the cycle. The wise part of our brain, called the prefrontal part of our brain, is in for weight loss and for empowered eating, is what we want to start engaging. It's the part of the brain that's making plans. It's thinking long-term. It's thinking, I liken it, it's so funny because I'm now going to start to call it also like the mama brain. It's like having, when our toddlers and we go to Walmart and we're walking through the toy section and the toddler picks a toy and says, no, I want it and I want to take it home. And we get to the cashier and we're like trying to peel it out of their hands. The mama is, and the toddler's having a complete freak out. It's having an urge. It wants it. No, but the wise mama says, no, you're going to be totally fine. We have a plan. We have toys at home. You're going to be fine. Right? And the mom can be calm and not be fussed that this child is having a panic attack, because we know the long-term gain for this. That is the mentality that we need to get into when we're thinking about it for food. So the 5 steps for empowered eating are, number 1, as I shared, be aware of your thinking. What part of your decision is being made from your baby brain, which is short-term, it wants instant gratification, it wants it now, but it's not thinking long-term. It's not thinking of your health goals. It's not thinking of the lifestyle that you want. What part is it that we can start to engage the wise brain and start challenging and having our thoughts coming from our prefrontal? Number 2, and step number 2, is to plan what you will eat 24 hours in advance. That is engaging our prefrontal brain. And friends, we do this all of the time in other areas of our life. You did it today, jumping on here. You planned, you booked to come to a training class, and you showed up. You use your prefrontal brain for things in your life. How can we be including them now as part of your eating plan? Number 3, make your plan realistic and gradually improve upon it. I have clients that when they first start with me and they say, okay, I'm just going to cut out all fast foods. I said, okay. So from now until 93 years of age, you're never going to go through a fast food restaurant again? Tell me, how often do you do it now? And I've had clients say, well, 5 days a week, every day I go out for lunch and I go to the fast food. I said, okay. How does that feel to think that we're just going to turn and do a 180 right now? How sustainable do you think that is for you today? And how does that make you feel? And it often makes them feel anxious and resentful and deprived. Of course it is. So I'm like, okay, well, how can we get you to this place that you get excited to make any small changes and increments into your plan? And so for one of the clients in particular, we just started, and she's starting to do just, she was a 5-day a week because she passed, and that was her route to work was she would pick up her food on the fast food and on her way home. So she's planning her meals one time per week from home. And then the rest of the 4, she's still continuing on her journey. but she's going to get really good at doing one day a week where she's setting herself up for success, that she's going to get so good at it, she's then going to introduce it to 2. And then we're going to do that. And then she's going to introduce it to 3. And she's going to become a woman that's honoring the commitment she makes to herself. And that, my friend, is long-term. And that is empowered eating. Number 4 is learn to feel your feelings instead of eating them, right? It was like knowing when, right? This month, we're talking with my clients about emotional eating and what emotions charge us to turn to food. The biggest part of that practice is just even recognizing it. So for you, what are those feelings that you're choosing to avoid currently and using food? Just starting to be aware of it is the first step. That will make a huge difference for you moving forward to knowing and recognizing, oh, that's so interesting. At night when I'm feeling bored, I turn to the popcorn or the chips. I wonder if I could be a woman that feels bored without food. It's a fabulous and empowering feeling and sense when you get there. And the last one is using coaching tools to manage your hunger scale and learn how to honor yourself. That has been, as I said, for most of my clients, tapping into regulating their hunger scale and regulating that whisper of hunger, knowing that they're okay, of what it is to eat to a -2 instead of a -8. It sets up this confidence within themselves that all of a sudden they're women that can, go out to a restaurant and just know that they're going to honor themselves with what they're ordering because they know where they are in the hunger scale. And that, my friends, is what all of those steps together is the empowered eating. One of my clients, Christy, when she started, this is pre-COVID, when we were able to meet in person, she came to my home office and had shared with me saying, this is all fine and dandy, and I really want to do this, but I don't really know my emotions and I don't really talk about them. I'm like, okay, that's no worries. Let's just get started. And so we started on our program. And a couple of weeks in, in one of our sessions, I said, Christy, it's not that you don't notice your emotions. You're just eating them. Like, it was plain and simple that for her, it was anxiety. And it was anxiousness for her, just she never wanted to feel it. So she always just buffered it with food. Once she was able to learn how to overcome that and get to this place of being a woman that could feel anxious and not need food to solve for it, she was able to lose over 60 pounds. And she is confident that weight is never coming back. But here's the kicker. She hasn't gotten rid of anxiety, anxiousness, and this happened all pre-COVID. And she was able to keep her weight off during COVID season and her husband getting strep throat through all of it, of just being anxious and not needing food to solve for it. That is the answer, and that is empowered eating. So my question to you is, are you ready to control your eating, your mindset around what it is? It's not a diet. It's the way we think and why, and answering for the question of why I'm using food and how to get you to this empowered place for living and for weight loss. What would that look like for you to be able to not worry about what food it was and how you were feeling, and have that confidence that you were a woman that could deal with any emotion? If that's something you're interested in, then that's what I have created a program for. And it's called the Joy Club. And it's a very joyful picture of Laurie. But it is I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to help women create a healthy relationship with food and with themselves. I was finding that for myself, my experience was I was spending so much time consumed with what I was allowed to eat, what I shouldn't be eating, oh my goodness, and all of this other stuff and the stresses that it was causing. I feel like I was missing my life. I have 3 beautiful young children that, young adults now, but during my process of this, they were young and we were active, and yet I was spending so much time as a slave to my thoughts and my relationship with food and with my negative feeling with myself. And I was like, no. So as soon as I was able to do the work and study this, I knew I needed to share it with other women. So within the side of Joy Club, you will create a healthy relationship with yourself and with food. You'll learn how to fuel your body and recalibrate your hunger scale. You'll also learn to honor when you're hungry and stop when you're full. You'll develop a system to set you up for success every day We have a system inside it, so it has this repetitiveness to start to create new habits and new beliefs. You'll become someone who honors her commitments of what you say you're going to do for yourself and making yourself that priority. You'll start to learn how to have awareness of all of that self-sabotaging thoughts that come in through us. I've named mine Nellie Olson, right? And now she just comes along with me. I don't really give her much credence anymore. And you'll learn how to confidently take control of your eating so you can lose your weight for good. And there's some women in my program that don't actually have weight to lose, but they were so tired of being led by the worries about what they were eating constantly. So how does this all work? It is through a combination of a live and weekly coaching calls that are always available via replay. It is monthly life and weight loss lessons. It's not just weight loss, because I figure we need to figure out why during life we're choosing to make the decisions to eat. So we're going to talk about weight loss, but we're also talking about this month coming up is on being a perfectionist. So many of the members struggle with that. In July or in June, it was on creating healthy relationships. So we're always talking about things that will help us create us to be those women that we want to be. Then inside of it as well, there's daily exercises to help you implement the tools you're learning. And you'll be surrounded by a community of amazing women that encourage, inspire, and empower you. So this is in essence what Joy Club looks like. This is just a snapshot of the website, but there's about 9 different categories in here that all have just different features and programs. In it, there's videos by me pre-COVID. You can see there, getting some roots done there. But they're all just short little snippets of tools that you can learn and then go and implement into your life. There's worksheets that you can either print off or just write down the questions into a journal and notate and take notes on. But there's daily focuses and daily practices. But the real nugget of this whole Joy Club is the coaching calls. It's the community. It's where the women come together, and some of them, don't want to turn on their cameras. Totally fine. But they'll listen and they'll be inspired by the women that are being coached and being vulnerable to share what it is that they're going on and what's going on with their life. And dollars to donuts, whatever it is that one woman is struggling with, somebody else, most of us, can completely relate to what's going on with that one woman. And then me as a certified coach, I help them unravel and see where their thoughts are taking them and help them get to this place of empowering them to having either a new thought or processing the thought and the emotion that they're having. So one of my clients just recently sent me this. We have a weekly win, so they'll send me the different things that happen. So Kelsey says, I've lost 7 pounds since joining Joy Club in June. I hit my June goal and I'm on track to achieving my July goal. I proved to myself that I can do new and hard things. And she's blowing her own mind. So as a previous fundraiser, I'm very comfortable talking about money and the value and everything else that's in it. So I've laid it out as I would like a fundraising plan to show you sort of the value of everything that's in here. Listing out everything, sort of a cost analysis, if you would, because that's my kind of fundraising brain. The monthly life lesson, the weight lesson that's in there. The live coaching is what I do in my outside course practice, would be what I would charge, $500 for that. Essential training, my coaching tools, and then all of the weekly practices and exercises. Plus, I put in there an already created Stop Overeating course that was actually sold and had a number of women be taking that in previous, which they paid $500 for. So the whole value inside of Joy Club currently right now is over $2,000. But remember, I'm passionate about getting it in front and equipping all women, because I believe all of us struggle with some point of food ruling us. So I've made it that it's less than $50 a month with no limitations. So you can come and join for a month and cancel if you've wanted to. And there we go. We've just put the link in there. So we're going to start putting that, because basically what I'm doing here is it starts and the doors open as of today for Joy Club until the end of July. And then we close it, because then we start to work as a community for the next month coming up. But the link there is for you if you're wanting to go on now to actually join now. There's a bonus for people that are eager and to join today. So Danielle just said, I'm loving Joy Club and I'm proud of the changes I've made so far. I'm gaining confidence that I can do this. That in and of itself, imagine yourself having the confidence to make the changes you know are going to be life lasting, that they're not short term and that you're not going from a place of deprivation, but you're going from a place of empowerment. So when you go onto the website, this is the page that you will see. And you'll note here that I've got a spot where it says referral. So if you have anybody currently in Joy Club that has encouraged you to check us out, please note their name there, because they're sharing joy with you. I share joy from them or with them. And so we have a bit of I give them a little gift to let them know that it's so appreciated for them sharing joy. So please do that. So the fast action bonus, as I said, I really like to reward people that are in that frame of mind to make a decision and to make it boldly and be women that believe that they're women that make great decisions. So if you join before this call ends, you'll get an additional of the 3 trainings that I've done in the past. How to overcome overwhelm, which is one that I continue to do with school districts, with churches, with retreats, and different women group. It helps you just get to this place of having tools that you can always refer back to of how to overcome overwhelm. Then during COVID, I created a new training called Finding Calmness Among Crisis. So that recording is there and available to you as well. And then you also have, which in and of itself, the retreat, it was a full day that I did with my clients. I believe that the ticket price was about $250 to create your extraordinary life. So inside for the bonus, you'll have all of the recordings for all of the courses that I taught that day, plus the whole workbook. So all of that with no extra charge. So I'm adding that in as an added value if you're purchasing today. So for $2,300, you'll get all of this, and basically a life coach to help you lose weight for good. Twice a week, we have calls that you can show up for only $49 a month. So last quote here is from a student of ours that is confident that the weight that she's losing will never come back. Can you imagine getting to that place? And truthfully, I can tell you I'm there. Losing my 47 pounds, I know. It was just my birthday this last week, and my sisters and I, one of my sisters and I share our birthday. So our third sister made this incredible cake. And it was like, I didn't say no. I knew that I was planning to have this. And I am a woman that sticks with what I plan to have. And I can still maintain my weight loss and still have decadent things in my life. It's not eating sawdust, and it's not sticking to a plan of deprivation. It is making it work within my lifestyle. And the one key there is figuring out all of the empowered ways to be able to do that. So, oh, and I forgot about this too. I always forget. So what I also do is I add bonuses too. So in the month of July, we had a nutritionist come talk to us, and she gave us an hours of her time to answer any and all of our questions and help answer any of the questions that people had about different keto diets and such, because again, they're figuring out what foods are going to work for them for the weight loss as they're honoring their hunger scales. So that recording is also available as a bonus as well. We also, coming up in August, have a new Joy Infuser bonus coming up. So that's around the corner, and I'll be announcing that August 1st. So you'll be the first to know once you're in. So if you have any questions for me, I encourage you and I invite you to go type them into the chat box now. I have a few common ones that come up. So while you're typing those, I'm going to just go to my next slide. So some of the main comments that I get or questions are, what about group coaching makes me nervous? And if that's the case, I totally get it. There's absolutely no requirement to get coached, to even turn on your video while you get coached. You can listen to all of our calls are, as I say, are recorded. So we've even made them into MP3 files so that you can actually listen to them while you're out for a walk or in the car. So you can be and get coached simply by listening to other people get coached until you're ready. And there's absolutely never any pressure. What if I can't make the calls? Well, as I alluded to, all of our calls, we do have we're in the Pacific Coast, so we're in Vancouver, British Columbia, but we also have clients from back east and down in the States as well. So on the East Coast, so we have calls that work for both time zones. So if you can make the calls, great, but if you can't, they're all recorded and you can listen to them as often as you like to. And then what's my commitment? And as I alluded to, it's absolutely just monthly. So there's no penalty, there's no cancellation fee, you just join. But if you're seriously ready to do something different, do something different that has never been attempted before. And we have this community of women that is absolutely making it and encouraging us and empowering and inspiring us to be able to do it. And they're applying the tools, then you've got to join us.